I mean, it makes sense in a way because we know that the solar sector is seeing slower growth, and slower growth means less workers. But we could still reach 1 million workers by the end of the decade, and we still have high installation and manufacturing capacity targets for the end of the decade. So is the current workforce is that up to the challenge of delivering the energy transition?
This is a complicated question.
Yeah, it's a big one.
You can't have a yes or no answer. What I think is
This is Shine On Policycast, SolarPower Europe's podcast dedicated to EU policy about solar, with updates in 20 minutes or less. So welcome to Shine On Policycast, Jacopo. And for our listeners today, we're joined by Jacopo Piccalgi, who is a Project and Policy Officer on Skills here at SolarPower Europe. And it's great to have you, and it's perfect timing because we've just launched our 2025 EU Solar Jobs Report. And you've been hard at work behind the scenes with our market intel team and everyone involved in the report to look at the latest findings of the solar job market in the EU. So maybe we can kick off, Jacopo, with some key numbers and key findings of the report. What should readers know from the report?
Super. So thank you very much for having me here. Indeed, there was quite a lot of research done, especially by the market intel team, on the jobs report. The first number that comes to mind would be 865,000 full-time equivalent workers. Mm-hmm. This number reflects how many workers the market intel team estimates to be working in solar indirectly and directly in 2024. Mm-hmm. This marks a 5% increase from the previous year. So although it's an increase, it's a slow in the growth of workers in solar. And this announced a bit the mood because what we have expected for 2025 is 825,000 full-time equivalent workers. This is a 5% drop from 2024 one. So we are basically at the same level or slightly below the ones of 2023. Mm-hmm. It's a decrease in growth that can be also partially explained by the 1.4% decrease in annual installation of solar PV. This is partially caused by competitiveness increase as well as a decrease in support and regulations for solar. And when we look at a bit further in the future, so in the upcoming 5 years, we are expecting this growth to, be quite slow, so around 0 to 3% year-on-year growth. The sector that is suffering the most at the moment would be manufacturing. Mm-hmm. It's the only sector who has decreased from 2023 to 2024. And what this tells us a bit about all the numbers is also that we have to delay the 1 million target that we put. So we won't have 1 million full-time equivalent workers in 2025 like we expected. It's in the high scenarios expected to be in 2027, but we think that it's unlikely for it to be happening in the normal scenario before 2029.
So, I mean, it makes sense in a way because we know that the solar sector is seeing slower growth, and slower growth means less workers. But we could still reach 1 million workers by the end of the decade, and we still have high installation and manufacturing capacity targets for the end of the decade. So is the current workforce is that up to the challenge of delivering the energy transition?
This is a complicated question.
Yeah, it's a big one.
You can't have a yes or no answer. What I think is, yes, we can deliver near-term deployment, but not at scale with continuity unless we really invest in education, training, support, as well as manufacturing, and really support solar on all fronts, from skills to each specific sector. it has been scaling immensely until now. So we should not forget all the really big improvements that we have done. But we have seen some pessimism when it comes to meeting the targets and consideration about re-establishing and recalculating targets, which we believe we should, instead of putting the arms down, push for more dedicated efforts to ensure that we can meet them.
And we talk a lot about the number of workers, but what about the good quality and quantity as well? I mean, are the skills already there in the workforce, or is that something that we need to work a bit on?
That's a very good point. It's not because solar number of workers is not dramatically increasing that we should not dedicate enough efforts when it comes to upskilling, reskilling, and dedicating the enough resources to make sure that the quality of solar installations and solar manufacturing in Europe remains high. So we don't have all the ideal level of skills. It can always be improved, and this is what we highly encourage, is to dedicate enough resources to improve upskilling and reskilling of workers. This is also because the quality of people's skills has a strong impact on the competitiveness of the sector, also on the security aspect, especially given how this sector has been experiencing a strong evolution when it comes to the recent AI revolution, robotics, etc. So I think if we want to make sure that solar meets all the targets, we have to dedicate enough investments to integrate these new opportunities and tools into the solar workforce.
Make sure that we have the modern workforce required for the kind of modern 21st century energy transition.
Yes.
And so you mentioned that we need some support to get there, and in this in the EU Solar Jobs report we have I think a long list of policy recommendations, but maybe you can take us through a couple of policy recommendations. What exactly do we need from institutions in order to get the workforce to the quantity and quality that we need?
Yes, so there are quite a few policy recommendations, 10 of them. And if you would like the whole extent, I would highly recommend reading the report, because they've all been explained quite in detail. So there are different fronts and different aspects where we can really support the solar workforce. The first one, I think, would be on intelligence. We really lack data on skills, needs, jobs evolution from member states, from the European Union. So we would highly encourage, and I know this is the case, that Europe is working on it, but we need more efforts to make sure that we have all the necessary data. Because if we want to make clear forecasts on the needs, if we want to make clear policies, we need to know what we're working on with. And SolarPower Europe is already doing an enormous effort through the jobs report, but we need more support for this kind of reports. We need more diversified also sources of information. And I think this is one of the key pillars of the policy recommendation that I would push for.
And that means like granular data from national authorities or regional authorities about the skills gaps that they have or the exact shortages and trainings that they need.
Exactly.
Okay.
So more data on the skills gap, the shortage that they're encountering is exactly the kind of data, but as well as also the number of workers in specific fields and all of this information, because we are relying on data from Eurostats, and it would be really interesting to have more efforts made into that data to have even more accurate numbers and more precise predictions. So this is something I would also highly encourage. Then there is another point, which is continuing to have funding allocated for projects and initiatives that support upskilling and reskilling of workers in solar, but in the whole renewable energy sector as well. This is something that currently the European Union, the European Parliament are very much pushing forward, and we highly encourage to continue on this trajectory, and also to make actionable steps, because until now we are still waiting for a concrete new projects that are implemented on those lines, as well as also facilitating the navigation through all the different initiatives across the EU, because it's nearly my full-time job to keep track of all these initiatives and follow them. But even for me, it's quite hard to keep track of everything that's going on. And I think it will be beneficial for the end user, the target audience that we're trying to have these initiatives for, as well as also for the initiatives themselves, because then we avoid reinventing the wheel, we avoid duplicating efforts on certain things, and we can learn from best practices from across all different initiatives. So this is another point that I think is really important. But then there are also other recommendations, like facilitating working in solar. This is partially from retaining people from adjacent sectors, so maybe transitioning sectors or sectors that are encountering shifts in their workforce, like in the fossil fuel market with the energy transition. Many of the skills that are required can be also shifted to the solar PV one. So we highly encourage facilitation of portability of skills across other sectors, as well as within the same sector. So within renewable energies, it would be super beneficial to develop skills that are portable across the different renewable energy, energies, like solar, wind, etc. This will make jobs more attractive. It will facilitate also people acquiring of best practices across the different sectors. And when talking about mobility, also mobility across Europe, there are quite a few initiatives that try to promote mobility across Europe, but we also need more efforts on recognition of certifications, because it's good to have a passport with your skills to move across Europe, but people don't recognize your passport. It's pointless to have it. So it's really important to make sure that skills certifications are more harmonized across Europe.
And I actually want to go back to the point you made about different projects and initiatives, because one thing that SolarPower Europe does is we're involved in a number of EU projects on different topics, but we're also involved in the Reskill for Net Zero project with a few different partners. And can you tell us a little bit about the work that we're doing there and what the project is working towards?
Yes, definitely. So we are indeed working on a few projects. One of them is Reskill for Net Zero. We have also the Solar Academy that we're working with Energy. And the Reskill for Net Zero project is a project that was born from the Renewable Energy Skills Partnership. It's a partnership that we are co-coordinating with other organizations, which really has the objective of addressing the skills gap in the renewable energy sector as a whole, and uniting all the renewable energies to make sure that we can achieve all the energy transition goals that Europe would like to see. And part of this partnership was transitioned into this blueprint project, Reskill for Net Zero. And this project was launched late last December and kickstarted in January 2025. In it, we have developed a few urgent courses trainings to address some urgent skills gap across Europe. We have already successfully trained over 400 students across this project. So this is really good news, given that it's less than 9 months that we have been kickstarting this project. But the aim is not only that, it's also creating what I was mentioning before as a policy recommendation, this cross-portability of skills across the renewable energies. We are all these renewable energy actors working together, developing trainings, running research as well. As part of developing these trainings, we need to research what are the needs and what is missing currently. So it is already addressing quite a few points that I've mentioned, but I think that one of the limitations is the scale of this project. I think if we really want to address all the needs that Europe needs, we need bigger or more projects like this. And we need to make sure that when there are more projects like Reskill for Net Zero, we are not reinventing the wheel every time. We are not redoing the same mistakes, the same good, positive aspects. We need to make sure that we have one whole goal of all these projects that are working towards one same objective, which is also part of what we are trying to do as coordinators of the Reskill Renewable Energy Skills Partnership, is to create this skills alliance across different value chains where we can really make sure that we can develop trainings.
But it sounds like, I mean, congrats on all the trained students already. It's a great landmark for the project, and I think shows what's possible when industries get together and we all push in the same direction. We build in a foundation rather than reinventing the wheel, as you say. And actually, when this podcast comes out, we will have already launched our EU solar jobs report, and we will have had a big moment there for you, which I know you're in the midst of planning for now. But after that, what are some of the key moments coming up in the agenda that's big on the jobs portfolio side?
So there are lots of things coming up. What's really interesting is that when it comes to skills, it's not only skill-specific initiatives that target skills. For instance, there is the Net Zero Industry Act implementation secondary rules, which is really focusing on manufacturing, which is one of the sectors that we have identified as one of the key challenges for solar in Europe. And although this is not directly targeting skills or jobs, at least not from that side, it is impacting skills and jobs. So this is something that I'm very much looking forward to see how it's gonna roll out. And I think we will start to see its impact in late 2025. So it's something that could be interesting, especially from the manufacturing side. Then we're also working on different projects, not only on jobs and skills. For instance, EverPV is one of the projects that one of my colleagues is leading, and in it really focuses on EverPV recycling. And in that point, it's going to impact the jobs market on recycling and recommissioning. So also very much looking forward to seeing how this project will impact this sector. Then we have Repower Europe, which is going to be quite interesting to see how the member states will be translating the Repower Europe targets into the national support for rooftop and distribution PV. So all of these different initiatives that are not really aimed at addressing jobs
but
or
will
skills
impact them.
Will definitely impact, and I will highly recommend following those in the future, and I will be following those. Then we have projects and initiatives that are directly aimed at it, like Reskill for Net Zero or the Solar Academy. And we are planning quite a few projects. In November, we will also be having another projects and the launch of the Skills Alliance as part of Reskill for Net Zero. And finally, there is the initiatives and intergroups from the parliaments and the commission. So there's the intergroups on the future of education and skills for a competitive Europe. So it's basically, put it in very simplified terms, a group of members of the EU Parliament that are pushing for more investments in the sector of skills and jobs. So I think this is something that we very much support. We think that it's really good that people dedicate these efforts to education and skills, because often these are forgotten, and although they are one of the key pillars of society itself, because it defines what will be happening in the future. And the final, which I don't want to finish by the least important, is the Union of Skills. This initiative has been launched. It has 4 main pillars, which are very much aligned with all the policy recommendations that we have proposed in the jobs report. The first one is building skills for quality lives and jobs. The second one is regular upskilling and reskilling. The third one is helping free movement. And the fourth one is attracting, developing, and retaining talent. So all four very ambitious and very positive pillars that the Union of Skills is building itself on. So great congratulations to Vice President Roxana Minzato for developing and supporting such an initiatives, and we look forward to see how we can best support and be playing an active role in this exciting future.
Great. I mean, well, it sounds like, and very fitting, but the jobs and skills brief, there's plenty of work going on. And congrats on the latest report. And we really look forward to seeing how the jobs landscape changes before our next report, which will be next autumn. But thanks so much, Jacopo, for sharing your insights today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Shine On Policycast. Make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications to get updates about new episodes. Shine on.